Ruchim Aboyim, B'Shem Irgin Shir Torah, Moses Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Shaar, all the men joining us here in the main base Medrash, all the women joining us upstairs and downstairs, and everyone listening in on the phone or watching through the live streaming. I'd like to give a big yeshikach to Mr. and Mrs. Dov Nierenberg for exclusively sponsoring tonight's Shaar. As you've heard, we rely on the support of the Tzibur to cover the expenses of organizing these shiurim. Please call Irgun Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email tapecenter@yeshivanet.com to have the great schus of sponsoring a shir, having a chelik and abotas Torah derabim, or calling in with your generous donation to support the shiurim. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again Rabbi Yosef Weiner, Shlita Rav Shaar Hashomayim, to speak on the timely topic of children and parents, sensitive and timely parameters of interaction. It's my cover to call in Rabbi Weiner for tonight's drasha.
Big Shakayach, continuing very difficult, challenging, yet rewarding work of Rabbi Bol, Rabbi Deutsch, and the rest of the crew. I can give Adis that the young men in the back were setting up the last 4 hours testing the mic system. So if it doesn't work, I'll just speak louder. The people have noticed just a few advertisements. I'm always happy to make them as I have nothing to sell. And that is that we have now, not to any credit due to me, but we have a wonderful technical team in the shul in Muncie. There are over 1,000 shiurim on this little thing. And I brought them recently to a hakel. They're all completely free. The cost of this hard drive was roughly $10. That's what we charge just to make some more. And Baruch Hashem, he's making them l'roiv. So I have Adis that it actually works. You can't always see what title it is depending on the make of your car. But there are 1,000, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, wherever they're up to. But there are a lot of shiurim out here, Baruch Hashem, and they're only made for the people who are going to either listen to them for the first time, or many of you do chazara for many of the shiurim you heard in the past. So there are some by the ladies upstairs and downstairs, and over here. So just find me, or you can find Zev here. Once a gabbai, always a gabbai. I never really leave Flatbush, as you see. So you can give him the money, and we'll just make some more. Or you can go to the website. The cards are on the tape. Everything is downloadable and free on the website as well. Do not go to the website if you don't have a filtered computer. I don't want to be responsible. So make sure that it's a kosher venue, and you can download anything that's past this. This is made as of a week ago, I think. So it's pretty up to date. And whatever is new continues to go on the website as it does on Tyrene Time and Kol Lashon and wherever else you would like to get it. The topic we're on now in Muncie at Night Seder is Kibud Avim. I usually take sugya for about 3, 4, 5 months, however long it takes. The last sugya ended up being a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. And the Kibud Avim is turning out to be not less interesting. What makes it interesting is the feedback, pushback questions that you get after each shir, which are then, of course, addressed hopefully correctly sometimes in the next year. We are only 2 months into it. So what we're going to try to do tonight, Kibud Avim, we touched upon in this venue a few summers ago briefly. I have enough for the next 10 summers. So if you know anybody who has children, parents, or has neighbors with children or parents, then this is for you, which hopefully will include most of the Olam. And it's a vast sugya, not only in terms of the detail and the application, but in terms of the musar and the hashkafa shaba, you need constant reminders. There's no mitzvah I can think of. Lulav you take once a year. Sukkah, matzah, Yolanda Allah, and hopefully you do it right. Talmud Torah, okay, the halachas of Talmud Torah, just you got to learn. There are halachas of Talmud Torah, but you got to learn every spare moment. That everybody knows. Kibud Avim is one of the few sugyas that apply all the time. If you're close by, and if you're not close by, still apply, but you just don't realize it yet. I had a good laugh. I was on the phone with somebody about 3/4 of a year ago, and he was asking me a very difficult child. He didn't want to be interrupted. He was in the office in the middle of the day, and I heard in the background he got a call, and he screamed out, "Tell him I'm on a long-distance call." So He got back on the phone with me and said, I'm very sorry, excuse me. I said, you can't use that line anymore. That's not the 1960s. There is no such thing as a long-distance call. What's a long-distance? I'm on a long-distance call? Okay, ma. So I said, you're dating yourself, and that lie, that white lie doesn't work anymore. Well, it doesn't work over there, and it doesn't work by Kibud Avim either. So wherever your parents might be, it's probably not a long-distance call, but we'll get into the exact servicing and the parameters thereof. The sugya is often, I can tell from the questions that I get after each point, often uncomfortable for people, since it's so prevalent and so nogea. People say, you know what, I'm not that good at this. Either was the generation far, far greater than us. Abaye says, Ashrei mi shelo chama. It's a very startling statement. It's almost better if don't, Rahman Litzlan, nobody should look for this and daven hard that you have the mitzvah for as many years as you can. But in a way, it's so difficult. If you don't have the opportunity, then Enes Rahman Patri. That was said just as a limit schus. We look for the opportunity. We look for the mitzvah. It's doable. That line is not here to give us yish. It's here to show us how challenging it might be. And you really have to learn it and chazer it. And like a Musa Sefer, you got to hear it over and over and over again. So I could just do this here once a year. And just to do chazar will take us a few years. And hopefully we'll all be here in good health. But we're in the middle of the topic, and it'll take us about 80 or 90 shiurim on the system. So whatever's not clear from here, you can ask me afterwards or call me, or you could just tune in over there and catch up and then continue with us. You can send in all your shilas anonymously and ask it in the name of your friend and your brother and your neighbor. And you could do that here as well if we have time. I don't know if we're going to have. So with those disclaimers, let me choose some of the paramount central hashkafas and themes that we have in the short hour that we have here. And hopefully that'll be a catalyst to be able to ask more, look into it more, despite the discomfort and all the guilt feelings and all the things that go along with the sugya. There are three categories to Kibud Avim. Two of them you know about, one of them you're about to hear about. One is Kibud, one is Meira. Kibud is servicing. It might be more. We'll get into that later, Mitzvah Shem. Meira is not challenging them, not arguing with them. This is like the first few lines in Hilchos Kibud Avim. I tell this to children, teenagers, people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. They think I made it up. It's a Simon Reish Mem. You can look it up yourself. It's a Gemara. It says you can't argue with your parents. I just say that line. They're looking at me like I have four heads. You can't argue with your parents? If you can't argue with your parents, who can you argue with? Like most of the arguments are with my parents. So you can discuss. If your opinion is solicited, you can comment in a respectful way. If they're talking politics and it makes a huge difference in the outcome of the presidential elections and your parents are going to be the swing vote, which means you don't live in New York. So it's not Nogea here. So if you live in a state with no people and it's going to be a swing vote, then you can argue as nicely as you can to make sure the country is saved, whatever direction that happens to be. I'm not going to comment. That's not that common, that scenario. And usually all discussions about politics, again, if sitting around the table, they want your opinion, join the discussion, that gives them nachas, wonderful. If they're stating their opinion and they didn't ask you for yours, when in doubt, leave it out. It's good for writers, speakers, and children. And you have many, many opportunities to pass this nisayon, even though it's difficult. And we're pretty laid back about this. The parents are pretty laid back. We often, as parents, we want you to join the conversation. And you can even maybe disagree, and we sort of expect it, but just don't raise your voice and don't say in a chuspadik way. And that's okay if that mechila is assumed. It's not assumed if father starts telling over a story. You remember he went up to the mountains and we were by exit 103 back in 1979 and you pipe up and say, ta, it was 82. Makes no difference in the story whatsoever. Stam for the historical accuracy. That's also. Unless he asks you, I don't remember, it was a 79 or 82, limit yonam, limit sparum, and then you answer the question. We do that all the time. But it's a fairish mechaber. So I'm hoping, I have a lot of clues I'm hoping for. I just haven't found too many yet. I'm hoping that, situation like that, the parents not so uptight nowadays. We give a little more leeway, a little more slack, because we have many issues in our generation with the ability to keep in the years of aim. So 79, 82, you say it, hopefully they're Michael. But the din is you really can't argue, and certainly if they're not really interested in what you have to say, and they don't care whether it's 79, 82, they want to tell over the story. And Kehina Rabbah, stories, politics, and it goes downhill from there. Certainly when they're trying to dictate policy in the house of what we are and we're not doing, and where we are and we're not going, and all the other things, that's when they really probably, almost definitely, don't want you to argue. And again, we live in a democracy. I'm fond of telling over the story. This happened in the Flatbush. I was sitting around the table with my oldest daughter, was in 4th grade, I think, and I made the mistake of bringing up on Shabbos afternoon what we're doing in 6 months, the next Chol Hamoed. Usually it takes 6 months to prepare. So I had an opinion, my Rebbe had an opinion, and had 4 children at the time, and they all had a different opinion. And for some strange reason, our opinion was the Bronx Zoo on the free day, and they had some other more expensive, magical things they wanted to go see. So we said, yeah, maybe not, maybe yeah, Shabbos we can't get into the nitty-gritty, it's a good thing my daughter didn't say it's Hashomayim and start slugging me up, that she didn't know. And then my daughter said, well, it seems to be a disagreement, but she just started learning in social studies that we live in a democracy, and why don't we put it to a vote? So I said, I don't think so. She said, well, don't we live in a democracy? I said, well, the outside world, outside that door, there is some semblance of a democracy. In this house, not really. So she starts thinking, she's just learning this now. Like, says, what is it? The only other category, is it a monarchy? I said, thank you very much, but it's not exactly a monarchy either. She's thinking, I said, well, what else is it? So I said, it's a theocracy. And I don't interpret the halachas, and the dinim are as interpreted by the parents, hopefully asking their shaylas properly and being mechanech the children. So that's a difficult point to get across in today's day and age. And I'm not saying you should come down like a ton of bricks either, because you got to know the children and the generation, and there's some wiggle room according to the dar, but if we bend the tree completely the other way, then the children grow up, and as we all know, a child that gets everything they want and everything is a yes is not going to grow up to be a functioning adult. Nothing to do with frumkeit. This has to do with just a functioning adult. And I can't overemphasize this point to the parents. It's not a parenting workshop. But I tell them, forget the Shulchan Aruch for a moment, forget the frumkeit. If you want your kid to hold down a job, and the first time they're in the office and the boss asks them to do something which isn't exactly part of the job description, they have 2 choices. They could say, no, it's not part of my job description, or they could be smart and say, how do we do it? And the children that never got to know just don't know what the word means. So they're not going to be able to function when they get to the real world. A part of Kibud is giving over the Messiah. That's why it's in the Aseret Dibros. And Akaras HaTov, which we'll speak about. And learning to understand that there's authority in this world. And if you don't learn that, even in this generation, you have to learn it. And if you don't learn it, then you can't hold down a job, and you can't belong to a community, you won't function in a shul, and you're not doing a favor to your children. So that's why the backdrop here is so important. So we have Kavod, we have Yira. Yira is not arguing, not sitting in their chair. Interesting, some mitzvahs have siyata d'shmaya. Everybody knows you don't sit in Tati's chair. That's one of the only vestige of any of this is found. We don't stand up, which, okay, I'm going to be Mekel again. We assume everybody's Meichel because no one's standing up, so everybody's Meichel. Okay, Naniach. By the way, if the parent's Meichel and you do it anyway, you get a mitzvah d'oraisa. Okay, Naniach, the minig is not to stand up, and I don't ask my children to do it. However, you might want to think of a chilik between standing up and you come into the room versus having a conversation with them when they're completely horizontal, looking into a book and barely answering as you're talking to them. That's not standing up. That's not dealing with the situation. So there, it might not be asking too much. It says, can you just close it, sit up maybe. Well, it's not a 10-second conversation. We just have to discuss this. So the art and parenting, you have to know where to be meichel. You don't want to cause a michshol if they're not going to be up to it. And there are many things in our generations they're not up to. But we can't take Siman Reish Mem out of Yeridea. And we shouldn't, because then we'd have to take Kibud out of the Aseret Dibros, which we're not doing now, we're not doing later, and it's not to anybody's benefit, even if we could. Rachmana litzlan. Okay, so that's Meira. We're not standing in his place. We're not contradicting them, hopefully more than necessary. Kibud is servicing them. It might be more. We'll get into that later. Most of the issues in Kibud Avim, most of the categories, ironically, fall somewhere maybe in between Kibud and Meira. We'll get to those examples later. And they're a bit of a gray area. What I'd like to introduce is the third component, which is highlighted heavily by the Sefer Charedim. No, Sefer Charedim you all heard of. You'll say, okay, Sefer Charedim is from the Gedolei Achronim. Chavis Chaim quotes it all the time. It's a Musar Sefer. So why are we starting off with the Sefer Charedim? It's a Hashkafa Shir, but it's supposed to be a Halacha L'Maisa. So the Pella over here, I'm telling you this before I read this and after I read it. So you don't think that you could just like space out for the next 3 minutes. It's a lot easier. The Chai Adam, Halacha L'Maisa, Chai Adam. Chai Adam is not very wordy. It's the Pesach Achron before the Mishnah. We have the Chai Adam, the Kitzer, the Mishabur. Chai Adam not only quotes the Sefer Charedim, he quotes it almost verbatim. He holds it such a yesod in Kibud Avim. And people, I'm well aware, I deal with a lot of family issues. I'm well aware. I'll say the disclaimer now, it never gets me anywhere. I'll try to be myrich a little bit later. There are extreme cases where the child is part of Kibud Avim. There are extreme cases. They're extreme. I think not to chas v'shalom taina on any of our professionals. The from professionals usually doing a good job, Baruch Hashem. But in the world of psychology, when the person's not a ben terror and the lady is not a from lady with the proper hashkafis, I've had situations where you all know the script. You go and you ask, what did your mother do, what did your father do, what did your grandmother do, and somehow it's blamed on the parents. Sometimes, unfortunately, rightfully so, and there are situations where because of that, the emotional scarring and of the abuse is too painful and you're takapotter, onusach matapatri. There are cases like that. I have issued such directives in cases like that, Leilena. It's overapplied, clearly. And it's something that you can hide behind. You can say, look, I have tainas. I haven't met a child yet that doesn't have tainas. But most of the tainas, as they grow up, should be with the understanding that, you know, I was a kid and my parents loved me, gave me everything they need, made some mistakes along the way, but were good people. And I should start looking at the fact they did so much more for me than I ever imagined, that I still have the chiyuv and I'm not shivrei kalim because of it. And to take everything we're dealing with here as serious deraises. There are no, not serious deraises. I mean, aseres adibris. We'd call havdil in advertising a top billing. You don't, only 10 things made into the aseres adibris. And only 2 things the Chumash promised, arichas yamim and all sorts of schar, because it's difficult, but rewarding. So I deal with many cases, some extreme ones with a takapotter, and some where I felt it was being over-applied, and the children didn't have a right to disengage because of this taina, because the parents weren't mechuyev to do this for them. And even if they made a mistake, people make mistakes, but you move on. That's an important, I know every time I say that I'm going to get tonight calls and emails, what about this case? I realize, Leilenu, there are drastic cases. I just use my moshel the tree again. When you bend it too much the other way, you don't end up in the middle. And that's why the Sefer Charedim I'm about to read, that's quoted by the Chai Adam, is extremely important. And that is that besides the chiyuv of kibud and meira, there's a chiyuv of ava, of parents. You wouldn't believe the comments after I said that. Ava? Now we're going too far. Kibud, I'll handle. Meira, I won't sit in the chair. Ava? Now, if anybody says that, obviously has serious issues, and it could be sometimes the parents' fault, sometimes the children's fault, sometimes a combination of other factors. It's not always natural. It should be. So if it's natural, I would assume in the vast majority of the cases, we're in good shape, because the Sefer Charedim will be preaching to the converted, and there's a natural ava, and the Sefer Charedim is just saying you should always work on the ava to bring it to a new high in order to be able to be the mitzvah of kibud better, because real kibud is loving them, not having tainas, but doing kibud on the outside, which is better than nothing, but not where we're supposed to be. So the challenge will be when the children have issues and tainas, and it's not severe enough that they're patul lagamre to disengage. They have the chiv of ava, which again should come naturally. They have to build on it, and if it's not so natural, then they have to work on it anyway. I had a conversation with somebody in the past month. I'm going to give too many marmakemis, and his opening line, a good guy. Obviously, there are issues going on. His opening line was, "I hate my father." That's pretty jarring. So I happen to know a little bit what's going on. I said, let me just help you with that. It might take you a few years to internalize this, but you can maybe take that hate and turn it into pity. The father has issues. So it's a nebuch. He's not a Rasha. I'll get into that soon. And we'll get into the machlekes. Is there a chiyuv to mechabed a parent is a Rasha? But these are the extreme cases. I'm just trying to work from them backwards. That even in a case where there are some tainas and there are some issues, if you're having tainas, then if there's something there that was done wrong, then usually it's because other things went wrong and it's just a nebuch. Most people are inherently good. Just have issues and it's coming out the wrong way. Often, the taina is not strong enough to even have that emotion, but you can't change the emotion overnight. Is there a chiyuv to do it? Sefer Charedim says yes. It's part and parcel of mitzvah kibbut. It's not a value added. It's a real chiyuv. Let me read to you some of his lashon, and we'll see what the Chayatna brings down as well. Nira the ikar mitzvah is kibbut b'leiv. That's a chiddush. Not only is it also in the category of kibud, it's the ikar kibud. Why? Hare hishvi is barak kvaydem l'chvaydai. Hashem compares kibud avayim to kibud amakom. Hu yisbarach nisraim, Yeshayahu Navi says over from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that Hashem had a taina Klal Yisrael, very famous pasuk. Bepiv u'besfasav kibduni v'liboy richak mimeni, which means that we Yidden were doing the mitzvahs, but the heart was somewhere else. Nope. So what's better? Not to do the mitzvahs and have your heart somewhere. So Hashem, Kaviyachol knows that. The only thing worse than this is when they're not doing the mitzvahs at all. So Hashem said, but you, Kinderloch, you could do better than this. You're doing the mitzvahs, but you also have to increase your avos Hashem, and you have to increase your kavanah. And the Sefer Charedim says, just like the pasuk makes it clear, that it's a taina on the avodas Hashem. If your heart is not in it, that's not real covered. Kolomer sheikar kibudi b'leiv. And if you're not in it, you're going through the motions, which again is better than not doing it, but you're missing most of the boat, if not all the boat. So what do I do with this young man who tells me he has this emotion? I said, you're still chayiv and keep it avayim. I'll get back to the case later. He timed his father was a Russia. I'll explain why it doesn't apply. And I've had a few of these. So if anybody's listening and they think it's him, it's probably not. I had a few in the last month. And we have a situation where the Sefer Charedim not only says this is an ikar part, but he quotes a very frightening Zohar. Zohar Kadosh says, "Begavra deshtadol basar avua v'imei." Person who does the shtadlis in servicing his parents, the rochem lon. First description, the rochem lon. He loves them, he or she. Yaser migarme, loves them more than his own guf. Now the Ramban on the Haftarech Kamecha says that pasuk is a guzma because it can't be not natural to love somebody more than you love yourself. So is this a guzma or not, or there's something about kibbut avayim you even have to raise the bar on that? If you love them as much as you love yourself, you're in good shape. But the Zohar says even more. V'dinhu sharei amru b'medrash. Sefer Charedim continues. Chol mitzvahs kibbut avayim hi piron chayv shaben chayv lefor la'aviv le'imo ha'tayva shagamluhu. So I've had certain situations where the children say, I don't owe them anymore. I was machabed them for a number of years. I paid them back already. I'm all paid up. There is no such thing. And often they say that because they have tainas and they think they already gave back more. They said, I was already over on ribbis, one kid told me. I said, I wouldn't worry about it. There's no ribbis over here. And the karsa toiv is endless. And it's exercisav, even if they didn't do a very good job. Even if you don't feel so much a karsa toiv, you still have to mechabed them. Unless you have a tour of a Russia, which we'll discuss, and that's very, very rare. Mishain mechabdam nikra Russian. If you don't exercise this kibud and do it right, called a Russia desiv lover Russia lo yishalom. It's like a lover borrows money, doesn't pay back. He quotes in the footnote in the Sefer Charedim, the Ramban Chumash, the Sefer Dibros says the reason it's in the Luchas on the first side is because there's Hishva Kvedim L'Kvedim Makom. Interesting Shaila. The Achronim have a arichas on this. Is Kibud Avayim Barad L'Makom Barad L'Chaver. Both nafkamina is if you didn't do it right and you want to do tshuva, you have to first ask mechila and get mechila before you approach a Kadosh Baruch Hu, like any other Barad L'Chaver. So Ramban clearly insinuates it's primarily Barad L'Makom. Doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for mechila when you hurt somebody's feelings, but also the Kibud Avayim Shabbai, that's like a regular Barad L'Chaver. The Kibud Avayim Shabbai is primarily Barad L'Makom. As we'll see soon, the Chinuch says, because if you don't have a karsa tov to people, and especially to your parents, you're not going to have a karsa tov to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And because of the need to give over the Messiah parents to children, whatever the reason is, the Ramban says that's why it's found in the first part of the Luchas. that rise from the Rambam Kamat says beferish that it's better than the Chavero. Shaila, is it only better than the Chavero? Lamaisa, Allah Lamaisa, you have to ask Mechila anyway, and then you have to do tshuva because it's probably a little of both. This entire Sefer Charedim, the Chiyuv to love them and to increase the Ava, is quoted by the Chai Adam, and the Chai Adam goes a step further. After quoting this, which he holds as Davar Pashut, how often do you have in the Chai Adam quoting the Sefer Charedim? Here he quotes him. And he says even more. Hakibud, hu b'Barshava, you want to look this up and frame it. It's Klal Samach Zayin, Hilchos Kibud Avayim. I'm reading now from Sifkat and Gimel, after we quote the Sefer Charedim and Aleph and Beis. Hakibud hu b'Machshava, b'Maisa, b'Diber. The Machshava is, Machabdam b'Liboy, listen carefully, this is challenging. Chabdam b'Liboy, you should machabed them in your heart to the extent Shem chashuvim be'enov u'beliboy, that they're so chashuv in your mind and in your heart. What does that mean? Da'ainu sheyidma be'enov shem gedolim v'nechbedei aretz. You should have yourself convinced that they're the most chashuv of people around. Of course, the immediate question is, well, what if I know and you know and they know? Everybody knows that they're not. I'm not talking to Yechidei Skula. He's talking to everybody. So what exactly does this mean? He says, so my understanding is that you can't think they're the Gedolei Adar. It's impossible to have 12 million members of Klal Yisrael and every single one who's still a parent is the Gadol Adar. And it can't be that some want to time. No, the Chayam just means you should convince yourself they're the Gadol Adar, even though you know deep down they're not. That's not a possible shot in the Chayodam or any other Mefarish. You don't go through life lying to yourself to be Mekai in the midst of Mechabed more. What it means is every Yid has their categories they excel in. They're good at everything and they're better at certain things. And the child often is privy to seeing the godless that every Heilige Yid does privately because they don't want to show off. And often most of the mitzvahs and tevim that people do, we find out about it at the Levaya. And that's the way perhaps it should be, because you're not supposed to show off. And the children in the house should be able to get a glimpse of that godless. So they should take an example of 2 or 3 or 4, there might be 20 categories, and focus on that to try to energize themselves so that the Kibud, per the Sefer Charedim, is not just skin deep, and it goes toward Ava and very deep respect, not just lip service. And that's an avoid. That means you got to think about it. You got to find these categories. And you got to work on it. You got to constantly focus on it. And even when you see a midah that came out perhaps in a bad way on a bad day, you ignore it and you say that's not the real mother or father. And they're really the mitzvahs and ma'asim tevim that I see, and I see the parts where they shine. That's the real parent that I'm looking at. And the Chai Adam holds that this is a chiyuv, the ava and the kibud b'leiv. Speaking of jarring, I'm still in the Hashkafa portion, even though we spoke out some halachas. Rabbi Yankiv brings down, it's a little hard to argue with this raya. It's almost a case you don't want to think about, but to bring the point home in terms of the Ava, Mesiras Nefesh, you have to have for parents. If you ask anybody, I rigged it now because you know what I'm getting at, but if you ask anybody in the street, try it on after the Shaar, after Ma'ariv. If Rahman Laslai a ship is going down, and Ruvain is on the ship, and there's one more lifeboat with 2 seats, and he has 2 children and 2 parents on the boat. What's the din? Din means it's a din, not hashkafa, and you have to do it. And you should understand to do it because that's the whole construct of the Kibud Avayim. So you ask 100 people out of 100 people, the greatest ava a person has is for their children. So if you didn't think about this, and hopefully will never be no geya, you would say, it's a terrible decision to have to make, but my kids go first, ahead of me. Rabbi Yankiv says that it's pretty clear to him that the parents go first, because the Chiv Kibud Avayim. That, wherever I repeat that, there are people like on this for months trying to slug it up. They just can't. That shows you how. The Sefer Charedim says you have to have Ava. Here's the Ava. Rabbi Yaakov has a pasuk, as he always does. Anybody know what the pasuk is? Yehuda kept bringing up the conversation with Yaakov. They really got to go down to Mitzrayim because they're running out of food. he said, I'm not sending Binyamin down, nothing doing. And they asked again and again and again. They're running out of food. And then Yehuda tells Yaakov, let's go down. Nichye v'lo nomus gam anachnu. So that's really chayecha kaidmin. But the parent making the decision is not going to get a light bulb no matter what I tell him. It's really chayecha kaidmin. Who's next? Gam anachnu. Gam ata. That's you. Ta. Parents. And then gam tapenu. So, lo yaleinu, it's never going to be nogeya, but it certainly puts this into focus. And most people are not wired that way. It's a chiddush to me, even as I say it over. It's not the first time I'm saying it over. Is that Hashem put in the teva that the greatest ava seems to be from the parents to the children. And yet, like many other areas, Hashem asks us to subjugate our emotions to the chiyuvim. And the chiyuvim are on the parents in many ways heavier than on the children. Another drastic example. Rachel Imenu, this you know from the Zohar Kodesh, quoted by the Chidah, many other Achronim. Rachel Imenu stole the Trofim. She did that kula l'shem Shamayim. If anybody could do something 100% l'shma, it's Rachel Imenu. Kula l'shem Shamayim had absolutely no agenda. She wasn't selling it in the secondary market. She wasn't melting it down. Had no interest in walking around with these Trofim. And Lavan was aggravated. Normally, aggravated? You care if an Ovid Avodah Zarah is aggravated because he can't find his Avodah Zarahs? Let alone his lesson, they shouldn't be an Ovid Avodah Zarah. Well, what do we care? So normally we wouldn't care because we want them to be losing their Avodah Zarahs. Happens to be, Lavan is her father, and even though she got immense schar from trying to wean him off of the Avodah Zarahs, and by the way, she knew full well that when he goes back home, he'll make some more. One of the only advantages, Rahman al-Islam, of being an Avodah Zarah is if you ever lose one, you just make one the next minute. It's the only advantage I could see. Just buy one at your local outlet. You can today probably order it online. And, they'll, the people who order online without their filters are probably doing Avodah Zarah also. So, so you can order it and, make another one. But the gods are not indispensable. So what was she saving it from? The answer is 3 days, 4 days, a week of Avodah Zarah is also something. So kula shei shemayim, a mitzvah rabbah. Mafresh somebody from Yisura. Gavaldig. So Zohar Kodesh says, Zev, Garim. There are many midrashim behind this, but one of the reasons she died in childbirth, and Dafka, the Mitzvah Mid over here, was she wasn't zeichet to raise her son because she didn't do Kibud. That means when a person is faced with a shayla, and I've had all of these, and then some, doctor said that he should really cut down on the cigarettes, and he asked me for cigarettes. Beferish, like mitzvah the rights of servicing. You're at the airport? Stop at the duty-free shop. I want one of those big packs, like on the skids. We're not going to address that shayla now. It's a serious shayla. It depends how many he smokes a day and how bad the situation is. But it's not push it, even though the kid thinks this is great. I finally get a chance to do something for my father. And it's a gavaldig mitzvah. The only problem is, Kibud is a dangerous situation when you're doing something that's aggravating him, even if you mean well. So you got to be very, very careful. And cigarettes are almost like, remember, even there's some Sarah Moshe would answer it today. I'm not a doctor. If you smoke one a week, it probably won't make a difference. And the father can't say, I just want the skid load because it's cheaper. Let me handle how many I'm smoking a week. It's not direct lif neiver necessarily, and it might be after getting a direct order, none of his business. And the same thing with one schnapps too many and many other things that the children face. But Zohar Kodesh does say that Lamaisa, she got punished even though she was trying to do the right thing, even though it was Zev Zegerim. Two more Makaris, just to show the seriousness of the backdrop of the sugya. The Achronim, already going back to the Rishonim, Rishonim discuss in general what are the rules for brachas. Which mitzvahs do we say brachas on? Which ones we don't? We do chesed, no bracha, staka, no bracha, kibud avim, no bracha. Why not? There are different rules. Some of them apply to all of them. Some are specific. Shuvas Rashba says you decide whenever you need somebody else to cooperate to get the mitzvah done, there's no bracha, not because he might pull out, but since it inherently involves somebody else, since he could be Meichel, it's not the same level of the Maisa Mitzvah. That's the Rashba. The Shas Shuvas Ben Yamin Zev says that if you have a situation where a mitzvah is not nikar as a ma'isa mitzvah, you can have an akum giving stock also, doing chesed, doing kibud avayim. Some hold their mechuyev. So it's not nikar as a ma'isa mitzvah. They didn't make a bracha. It's interesting because I thought it was counterintuitive. If it's not nikar as a ma'isa mitzvah, there's more reason to make a bracha, to make it more nikar. And I saw Rav Vosner asked that in the Tshuva, but that's what the Shuvas Ben Yamin Zev says. Stei Chemed, interestingly enough, says the reason they weren't masakin a bracha is because it's so daunting a task, and often we do 50% of the job, 80% of the job, 90% of the job, but it's one of those mitzvahs that's hard to do. Lulav and Esrog, you know you yotzi. Sukkah you yotzi. All the kavanas, all the zayas, maybe not, but you yotzi. Here, you got to try your hardest and you can't give up, but to make a bracha and then mess it up, Chazal weren't interested, which again shows you how concerned they were that it wasn't being done 100%. And again, that's not to cause yish. That's to help push the agenda of the focus. The Sefer Meir Shaar has a lot on Kibud Avayim. I just want to read his Lashon because when, I don't know what age you have to be the sandwich generation. But I guess everybody in Flatbush is 10 years older than when I left. So, roughly. So I assume that Baruch Hashem, as people get old, and we want that to happen, that's a good scenario, more keep it of aim, but it can get challenging. And people living longer, so today's 80 is the new 60, or whatever they say, and it's true. Partially, Baruch Hashem, people are healthy and they're living long, Ken Yirbu. He has a lashon, he wants to remind people of something we know, but when it becomes nogeh, if it becomes nogeh, it really takes extra mysterious nefesh, which means extra schar. And I always tell the people asking the shayla, just keep in mind, every time you bite the bullet and every time you go ahead and do it or hold your peace and don't say anything and don't start an argument, you might be buying like 9 days of life or 9 weeks or 9 months. I don't know what the cheshbon is. It probably depends on how difficult it is, but that's quite a deal. A couple people, when they hear that, they say, yeah, I live in Muncie, I'm going to do Shaluch HaKan. You can only do Shaluch HaKan May, June, and July, maybe. And that's not an answer. The Torah doesn't give us the ability to pick and choose. And the Torah just gives us the Arichas Yom. What the Tzad HaShavah is a different shmooze. He says, Miteva ha'olam, shebechol shebnei adam maskinim, when people get older, mishtanim v'nochen lichas lisketet. Sometimes they get more nervous and they get agitated. Befrat hazakenim she'avro aleim tzaras rabbis. Sometimes people have more difficult lives, lo aleinu, and it can wear them down. A child has to understand, a child who's 75, who's Baruch Hashem servicing a parent who's 99, these are real numbers, Baruch Hashem, today. They have to understand that as great as they are, it still gets a little more challenging, and they have to work with them. And sometimes, again, they do things that are a little embarrassing. Like the apple of your eye, don't let it stare you, don't get sad, don't get perturbed. Now the Rambam does say if it comes to a point you can't handle them, you're doing more damage than good, then let somebody else service. But that's a decision. We have options in nursing homes and other facilities, but we don't give away a mitzvah as precious as this and do it mitzvah ayidei shliach if we know mitzvah bayis and b'shluchai. So that's a decision-making process which needs a lot of objective opinion, and it has to be a very deliberate, careful decision. And what works for one is not necessarily going to work for the other. Now the in-between category, which is many, many, many cases. Bachrim love these shaylas. I get most of these in Bachrim, but maybe the married children already, the parents don't know. They already passed it. But if I have question and answers with Bachrim, which I do whenever I get the chance. So there are always new fascinating questions, but there's like 10 or 20 of them that if they didn't ask it, I usually throw out the question myself. Ledugma, like the smoking. So whether it's mutter or usher, Moshe held it wasn't advisable, even when he held it was mutter. Parents tell their son, I don't want you smoking. Anybody here ever hear of such an outlandish request? Are they mechuyev to listen? Well, they get schar if they listen for sure. Never could I take a risk at aggravating them, but are they mechuyev to listen? What's the din? Parents ask them, they're going on vacation, they go to camp, they go to yeshiva. I want you to take your vitamins. Take your vitamin C every day, and vitamin D, and whole regiment. That's easier than not smoking, by the way. But okay, you got to remember to take your vitamins. You have to take your vitamins. What does it do with them? It's cold out. It's 51 degrees. Put on your coat. All this should sound very familiar. If you didn't experience this, I wouldn't, Chas Hashem, suggest your mother's not Jewish, but it almost sounds like this is like the parents would almost be not focused on the job. They wouldn't be saying this. Kids take risks, teenagers take risks, and parents are here to try to always suggest that they don't take risks. What's the din? What categories is under, if any? So it's a three-way machlokes, every possibility. Some say, based on diukim from Rishonim, diukim aren't ironclad, but there's a Rashba in Yevamos that seems to say this, that it's not under Kibud, it's not servicing them. Doesn't service them if I do or I don't smoke, unless they taina that they want me to be around long enough that they can help them in their old age. Okay, that's an interesting argument. You could say that about the vitamins also, perhaps. It's not servicing them directly, and he's probably not going to catch pneumonia, Baruch Hashem, if he goes out without his coat. It's his life, it's not helping them, and therefore it's not on the Kibud. It's not on the mirror, because perhaps mirror is only when I argue with them. I'm not arguing, I'm just going out without my coat. Now, as you are probably thinking right now, that's, in my mind, our place going to go with that. It's a difficult position to understand or accept. Chaznish doesn't like it, and many others don't like it either. First of all, if your mother, you're about to walk out the door, your mother says, put on a coat. It's not 90 degrees. You can put on the coat, and it won't be that bad for you. You just think you don't need it. You're only walking 40, 50 blocks, and you'll be fine. So what's the problem? And kids walk out. I have children. They're all, Baruch Hashem, healthy. Muncie, it's been like 17 degrees. And they're only going to the next house, which is 2 miles away. So, okay, you're young. You think you always feel healthy and invincible. That's fine, but that's what parents are for. But are they servicing me? It's not covered. I told them to put on a coat. They walk. They look at me. They look at the coat. It's not my children. And you walk out of the thing. So is that not arguing with your parents? You didn't say, no, I'm not putting a coat. You just ignored them. So Chazni says, well, why isn't that a violation of Meirah? You have to argue pemale, isn't it? When it's obvious, if they don't know whether you take the coat, put it on, when you turn around the corner, you take it off, that there's more to discuss. If they don't know, they won't find out. Of course, your mother will find out, by the way, so I wouldn't try that. It's got cameras all over the place. But if Lu Yitzhak, they wouldn't find out, there are shitas, Marish B'fanav might be a little bit better. Why isn't that the same as arguing? It's an argument that in terms of lumdis, I don't have a great answer for. Chaznish holds that it's under Meir, and he holds that even the Rashba held, it was just not get that Sukin Yavamis Achad say that the Spitz Kibud is servicing them, but it's under Kibud and Meir anyway, and the Gross seems to say that as well, as do many other Achronim. When the Bachram asked about the smoking, last week somebody asked me about drinking beer. I said, your mother asked you not to drink beer? I think I'm going to get her number because that's Shaila Lifneiva already. I said, not that you have a drinking problem, like you go to a Shalom Zachar and you want to have a beer. His mother is, I'm sure, a fine lady. She doesn't want her son drinking beer. That's not going to work today. Call me a liberal. So you got to know what's going to work, what's not going to work. You say you don't want them drinking heavy liquor. Hopefully, maybe that would work. Maybe yeah, maybe not. Try. You don't want them getting drunk. That might work. And it's not servicing them, but it's aggravating them if you're not listening. So it's at least, many holds, at least Meirah, some holds on the Kibud. Again, there are other Mekilim that hold this on the neither, but dealing with Daraisas, it's probably not Kedai to start up. The application brought down, the rayas they bring are from a famous Ma'arik. The Ma'arik is brought down by the Ramah, and this is an important case. This is the only case in Hoch's Kibbutz Avayim that's brought down. The question is, why does the Ramah only say this case? Let me tell you what the case is, and then I'll work my way backwards. The Ramah says, according to the Ma'arik, that if the child found a wonderful shidduch, he wants to marry this young lady, and everything's all set to go, and objectively, he asked his Rebbe, and he asked the Zayin Tuve here, and he asked the Shatzchan. The Shatzchan certainly gave him an honest opinion, and they all agree that she's the one. Gavaldik. And for some strange reason, the parents are Eish Lahava. I hope this doesn't come up too often. It doesn't come up that often. I've had too many cases of it, but that's out of thousands of... I've had only 4 this year. Two of them, we got everybody on the same page. That's the good news. We won't say the other part of the news. I tell the child, this is not worth it. Like, you gotta, like, these are your parents. You gotta really either you get with the program, or that's a good conversation to have when they're only on the fourth date and he thinks he decided. The night before the Vart, that's not an easy conversation to have when the parents still aren't coming. So this is not the norm, Baruch Hashem. It's not the norm because usually the parents are the ones vetting it in the first place. So Baruch Hashem is not the norm. What's the din? Ma'arik says unequivocally, the child does not have to listen. Again, I advise he does because they might be talking tachlis, but he doesn't have to listen. Now, Ma'arik brings down 3 different reasons why he doesn't have to listen. One of the 3 is this sugya, and that is, it's not servicing them, it's none of their business, it's your life, and if not the kibbutz, it's not the mirror. And that's only one of his 3 reasons. The other 2 reasons is he's about to do a mitzvah deraisa, and he's got to do a mitzvah. They'll say, I'll get you another one. Well, that's going to be a delay. That's a mitzvah right now. Doesn't have to listen. Parent can't ask you to do an avera, not a deraisa, not a rabbanon, not a minute kept by most of Klal Yisrael. That last category is a separate sugya. We'll mention a few if we have time. Over here, he wants to get married. It's either a mitzvah deraisa to get married or a hechsher mitzvah pruvu, and he doesn't have to listen to the father. That's the second reason. His other reason is that even on the tzad that you would have to listen if he's running your life and it's more than certainly a chaimish for any mitzvah, but over here we paskin mishalav lo mishaben. You don't even have to spend money on this mitzvah. So certainly if you're having a hefsid and now you're not going to be behind the mitzvah with the next young lady because you think that you missed the boat, not off the mitzvah shabai, just off the feeling shabai, then you don't have to give that up. So the question is, does the Ma'arik need all 3 reasons? The big nafkamin over here, or a third reason would have been enough. The first 2 are specific to this. Everybody's maskim that if the parents are asking you to do something and it's cramping your style, not the way kids say cramping your style, it means putting on a coat is not that difficult, even though they think it is. And not smoking is probably also not that difficult. And hard liquor on a consistent basis, these are things that are normal requests. Over here, if the case is reviewed by somebody objective, their Rav, his Rebbe, somebody in the community, and it's good shidduch, why are the parents objecting? I've had some very strange situations, but let me quote 3 of the most common ones. First one is money, second one is money, and the third one is money. Those are the 3 most common ones. I've had other ones also. It could be too much money, too little money, whatever the case may be. There are other reasons also, but they have this idea, and they say it's not lefik feidim. So some people can say, if it's mama should be zoyin for the family, then maybe the Ramah wouldn't apply. Okay, who's going to judge bizayin? And the person gets themselves all worked up. They think it's a bizayin. Okay, that has to be worked out. But the point of the Ma'arik that a child doesn't have to do something that's going to alter his lifestyle when it's not necessary and it's over the top is where everybody agrees the child is not mechuyev. If they do it and they bend over backwards, they get unbelievable schar. But if it becomes the law of diminishing returns and their avodas Hashem is lacking, the simchas l'chaim is lacking, it's just not working, then you don't have to do it, then it's not even a chumrah. L'dugma, this again doesn't happen too often. The mother or the father had their heart set on him becoming a doctor. My son, the doctor, used to be very popular. No, my son, she had her heart set on it, and he wants to become an accountant. Let me take something diametrically opposed. He wants to become an accountant. They wanted him to become a trial lawyer. Those 2 personalities are different enough, I would assume. Not that you can't do both. So he's going to be l'chaira, the accountant is going to be miserable as a trial lawyer, and vice versa. So listening over here would be very wonderful of him to try. That might not be too good for his general simchas l'chaim. Then he's not mechuyev, even as a hiddur. So you got to know what works and what doesn't. First, you got to know what the din is and what the chumrah is. The Rabbi Yosef is a fascinating tshuva in Kodesh Tshuvas. He talks about a son who was raised by a Sephardi father who was not from, he was Masoreti. He was raised in a community that was completely Ashkenazi. He went to Ashkenazi yeshivas. The father sent him to yeshivas. To his credit, Davin, Nusach Ashkenaz, the whole 9 yards. And then the father became a full Baal Tshuva when the son was 35. And he became a very proud Sephardi, which is wonderful. Baal Tshuva. That's so far so good. Where it got a little difficult was when he came to his son one day and said, I demand that you switch to Davin Sfardi, not Nusach Sfard. Even I can maybe handle that. We're talking about, it's a very different Nusach. And the son, who's not a kid, 35 years old, been learning a kollel for 10 years, and just not easy to, his friends, he's in a community like it. So Rabbi Yosef has a whole truth on it, and he said that if he wants to do it and he could do it, wonderful, and it gives the father nachas gavaldik. If he finds it too difficult, he's not mechuyev because that's a change in lifestyle. And you'll say, well, but he's a Sephardi mimakar, so why does he have to do it? So Rabbi Yosef says that the minig is not a din only in the minig of the parents, it's the minig of the parents with the minig you're brought up with. If you're brought up in this scenario, he says your minig is Ashkenaz. Maybe there's Sephardi poskim who would argue that point, but it's not only in Al Titish Torah Simecha. It's the vart in the Torah Simecha used to be a function of the minig of the town. So there's an example, relatively benign, and Rabbi Yosef said over there, based on this ma'arik, you don't have to listen. If you do, it's a very nice hiddur. You give nachas, wonderful. The kid, interestingly enough, this 35-year-old young man, ended up switching. And then the grandfather came over to his son, who had already switched, and told him that your son, the grandson, is getting married, and if the chasna is not completely Sephardi minhagim, if he doesn't switch, I'm not coming. That already is. So his shaila, he came back and his shaila was, should I convince my son, is that now Kibud aim for me or for his grandfather? There is a chiv Kibud aim for the grandfather, but it doesn't supersede the father, and the kid knows his father didn't want to do it himself. These things get complicated, and it's a shaila like any other shaila. But the ma'arik is paskin. The question is, which one was the main reason? In terms of I'll just go through this quickly. This took me about 3 weeks. This year that you can access. I won't. We don't even have the time. How many minutes can I go over? We started 6 minutes late. Okay. The Mechaber Paskin is based on the Gemara that if the father asks for a glass of water and the mother asks for a glass of water, and the child is stuck in the crossfire. Now, in a normal situation, normal home, this will only happen if the other parent didn't hear the first parent giving the first directive. Otherwise, what kind of marriage is that? Unless they're constantly fighting, and every time the mother asks for something, the father screams out and he wants something now. Let's assume it was an accident. Lamaisa, the kid's in the room. I'll make it a modern scenario. The father called him on the phone. He's 5 blocks away. Of course, he didn't know the mother asked him to do something. And the mother called him somewhere else. She says, I'm stuck at Moshe's Discount. I still have that here in Flatbush? Okay. So remember, it's not an advertising. It's just the neighborhood. I don't have a car. Can you pick me up? And the father called him. He's in Midtown Manhattan, and the car service is not coming. What do you do? So the Gemara says quite clearly that you do the father's bidding first, because she is a shibud to the husband, and doesn't mean the husband's better than the wife, but she is a shibud. That's a complicated topic to explain, but this is the din halacha l'maisa. And of course, we hope the scenario will 99% of the time end in the fact that the father will overhear that he's on the other phone at the same time. He said, who's that? He said, well, mommy just called me. Oh, mommy called you. Forget it. I'll stay in Manhattan overnight. You just go pick her up. And that is the happy ending to the story. But if that doesn't happen, then the din is that you have to do the father's bidding first. What happens if you're peeling potatoes one Erev Pesach in the kitchen for your mother, and you're in the middle of peeling potatoes, and she gave you 55 potatoes to peel? That's a small number Erev Pesach. And you're sitting there doing it, and the father runs in. Yankel, you have to come out. I just got a flat. I need you to help me jack up the car. So, if not even Zapasha, the son's allowed to say, I'm in the middle of peeling potatoes. He has to know what the din is. Let the father see he's peeling potatoes and say, forget it, I'll just leave it with the flat. You help your mother, which I'm sure will be hopefully the end result. But what's the din? So, isn't it the same din? What's the problem here? Problem is, Isaac mitzvah patam and a mitzvah. You started peeling the potatoes already. Your mother asked you to do something. You started doing it. So not only is Isaac mitzvah patam mitzvah patur, it's also to leave the first mitzvah. It's a bezayin for the first mitzvah. So some achronim have a fascinating notion that that's true by mitzvah A to mitzvah B. But if you think about it for a moment, mitzvah A is the mitzvah of kibbud avayim, and mitzvah B is the mitzvah of kibbud avayim. So maybe there's not a violation of Isaac mitzvah patam mitzvah, and he's allowed to jump from one to the other. It's the same mitzvah. So interestingly enough, and there are achronim that say such a notion, not benogeh to kibbud avayim. I found the tshuva from Reb Chaim. They're putting out a lot of interesting tshuvas from Reb Chaim, and he mamish bavons this. Somebody asked him, he already started with his mother, what's the din, should he stop? And Reb Chaim says, absolutely not. Isaac mitzvah patam mitzvah. And he says, and don't tell me it's the same mitzvah. It's irrelevant. You started. You can't stop what you're doing. It says only if both things come in, you didn't start anything, and one parent is not meichel. Hopefully this won't happen too much. The Mechaber Paskins, quite clearly, if the son wants to go learn out of town, and objectively his Rabbeim or somebody who knows what's going on agrees that it's more important for his learning to go out of town, and the parents don't want it, because they're going to miss him and they want him home. They're older, they need help. So again, he's not leaving them high and dry. Somebody's going to take care of them, and they want him home. Perfectly natural, and happens all the time. The din is that if it's clearly better for his learning, he's allowed to leave. I've mentioned that after hearing the father and the son in a few scenarios, and then the father inevitably would ask me afterwards, does the Shulchan Aruch say who has to pay for it? It's a good question. It's not so push it. I said, well, your chiyuv in Talmud Torah is to make sure that your son gets to a level, it's a complicated sugya unto itself, but you have to teach your son just the basics. The Shulchan Aruch says you got to finish the basics yourself, which the Shulchan Aruch says is only Shas Bavli, Yerushalmi, Sifri, Sifra, Mechilta, Medrash Rabbah, Shulchan Aruch Torah, and it goes through the finite list, and then you're finished with the basic mitzvah Talmud Torah, and then you should learn more Be'in. So, if you wait till your son to finish that, then you're never putter. Pasha says you have to get him up to a madrega where he's able to continue learning himself, and if he has the kalim, he knows how to learn. So, depending on the bracha, what level is that? So it's not 8th grade, it's not 10th grade. Maybe it's 2nd year bes medrash, maybe it's 2nd year kalim, maybe it's 4th year bes medrash, somewhere around there. So when the father asked me that, I said, well, it depends. It's a schus to pay once he's going already, but depends where he's holding in his learning. Same thing would apply to any situation, as we mentioned before, where the father is uncomfortable with something the son is doing, and it's a din. If it's a din d'oraisa or a din d'rabbanan, there's nothing to discuss. You do it carefully. The father often, if a father countermands this, is because he feels insecure, and he's just not doing it himself. He doesn't want you doing it. If it's a real din, there's nothing to discuss. If it's a minig, the father doesn't have payas, not long, not behind the ears, and his son wants to go payas. Likes the way his friends have it. Well, yeshivish, there's the elam he's in, whatever it is. It's not a din d'oraisa, it's not a din d'rabbanan. It wasn't even the minig in Europe. It is now no taina on it, but what's the din? So usually I pull the father aside and I clue him in on what's going on in the world. I said, Ashrecha, this is your aggravation? This is your big problem in the world. Your kid wants to have payas. I said, any other problem at home? He says, no, everything else is fine. So the father needs a cold bottle of water over his head, and he should go home, and I tell him, go home and say Moedim with a lot of kavanah. And if you want to know what the din is, if you press me, the din is that the kid is to listen to you. I don't think that's very smart, but that happens to be the din. It's not a minute that everybody keeps, and it's not a din d'oraisa, it's not a din d'rabbanan. Why the father? What's the issue over here? The answer is it's usually an insecurity. It makes me him look more frum. Makes me look bad. It doesn't make him look bad. It makes him look like he raised his son and he wants to do it. And what's the problem? Same thing with the gartel, and same thing with any of the traps. Unless he thinks it's something dangerous or unhealthy, but then he's got to prove it, and might be the case, but often not. Let me just touch upon Kibud Aviv Rosha, because I hope it's halacha l'maisa, but it goes back to the thing we touched upon before, and it really needs a separate sugya, because, as I mentioned, the frum therapists that have to deal with this, they consult us Torah, and the sugya has to be worked out, and sometimes the kid is potter or potter for a time, or it has to be curtailed, the interaction, till everybody's healthy. Quite often, it's the kid's not thrilled about everything that he didn't get, and the parents perhaps made some mistakes. That's not a reason why they're labeled as a sham or somebody I don't have to listen to, because I'm not as happy as I should be. The Rambam paskins that a child is chayiv and kibud avim even if his parents are rishayim, and the case is a peled, the Rambam spells it out. The Rambam says if the kid is a mamzer and the parents are rishayim, and that's why he's a mamzer. Can't get worse than that. Now talk about emotional baggage. A mamzer can become bigger than a Talmid Chacham, than a Kain Gadol in Amoritz, and he can be the next Gadol Adar. But it's a difficult, the shidduch is difficult. It's a difficult existence, as you can imagine. See, he doesn't have tendons in his parents. How can the Rambam, just put it into, how can the Rambam say he's a Chiyav Kibud? He should have the right not to talk to them. So the Rambam is assuming not so, most scenarios. It says it's a terrible tragedy, and you have to move on with your life. That's implicit in this Rambam before you start explaining. The Rambam says he's talking about the mamzer has to have chiyuv for his parents who did a ma'aser rishus and didn't do tshuva yet. The Ramah says, yesh, that it's not true, and if they didn't do tshuva, you have to mechabed them. That's interesting. Many achronim, Ashkenazim, like the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and others, this is rare, say that the Ramah is not really arguing in the mechaber, because when he really argues, he says yesh amar, yesh cholkim, and then he says v'chein ikr, v'chein aminig. He doesn't say that here. The Pri Megadim says, being Yeridea, that the Ramah is just mentioning another shita. He's not necessarily arguing. And they suggest, a lot of the Peskim, that Safed Reis to Chumrah, and you should be mechaber them even if they're Rishayim. Again, if there's no severe collateral emotional damage that the child can't deal with and can't live a healthy life. That means that in the case I was talking about before, one of the three cases, he said he doesn't like his father because his father does this, that, and the other thing. I said, allegedly he did this, that, and the other thing. I don't know that, and you don't know that, so you can't paskin he's a Rasha. Number two, the Aruch HaShulchan says quite clearly, a Rasha is either a Rasha lahachis, we don't have too many people like that today, or a murmur l'te'avun, that he's doing constant aveirus of a very serious nature. Not if he fell in over here, and over here. Not a good guy. He has to work himself out. He's got to improve. It doesn't make him a Rasha. So to be makel on this din, first of all, you have to assume we pass him like the Ramah if the Ramah is really arguing in the mechaber, which is debatable. Then you have to really designate him as a Rasha, and you have to be an Ashkenazi, and you have to make sure you're not mavaza him. The Shach over there says quite clearly, it means you don't have to be machabed. And case in point, the young man that was talking to me mentioned that he hasn't really talked to him for about a year. So I thought that was a good zma. I said, you haven't talked to him? Like, what do you do if you meet in the hallway? He said, if I see him come down, we both look the other way. Now, I don't think the Rambam would agree with that. That's a bizayon. That's not lack of kavod. So I said that. He said, I'm not mavazim, no one's seeing. I said, I didn't say you're mavazim barabdim, but it's a bizayon. So, before anybody thinks of applying this rule, the first and foremost, you can't paskin he's a Rasha. Somebody else has to objectively paskin that, and then you have to know whether you can really rely on the Ramah and know what you're doing is not a bizayon. I'll end with, we'll save the rest of Mr. Shem for next year, I'll end with one very fascinating Yaris Devash, Rabbi Yosef Weiner. Yosef Weiner is a shtickle on perm. So remember this throughout the whole year and say it over on perm because it's a fascinating idea. He's the one who was machadish that the reason Esther Hamalka had to be chosen to fight Amalek is because she's the only one in that generation who did the mitzvah of Kibud perfectly. She did it perfectly, but she didn't have any parents. And the rule is that whenever, you can't fool yourself, but if you're a Balas Madrega like Esther was, or a Baal Madrega in any area, and you really want to do a mitzvah, and you can't because you're an honest, Hashem gives you the full schar, keilu you did it. But that is assuming Hashem knows whether you really would have done it. Esther Malka really would. And she always in pain. I never got a chance to do Kibbut Avim. So she had an absolute A+ in Kibbut Avim, which nobody else gets because it's a difficult mitzvah. And we shoot for 90, 95, shoot for 100. You'll end up at 90. That's Gavaldik. Only she could take down Amalek Esav, who excelled in the mitzvah of Kibbut Avim. That's his opening line. And then he makes a comment. This is Rabbi Yosef Weiner just a while ago, and it probably got more difficult since then. He says, our generation, it's going downhill already. We're in a situation where the parents have to flatter their children. They shouldn't get angry at the parents. This applies the whole year. Roy Lini Behem Kibud L'Ma'oid, because that's the whole schus of the Yeshua of Perm, and he insinuates that will be the schus L'Salova. Believe it or not, the Gula Shlema is totally in many things, and Kibud Avim is one of them according to this Yaris Devash. Ki Zui Haisa Tzaleh de Esther V'Nepach, and he gives an example. It's unbelievable. He says he's noticed. Context of perm. It's just a perm example. He's talking about perm, but you apply it to wherever, hopefully you didn't see it. Sounds like it's married children. They send you out shalach manos. You send to your kids. Send your kids a Flatbush and a Muncie and Lake, wherever they live. You're sending out shalach manos packages. So he says he's seen that kids, when they don't get exactly what they wanted, their favorite pie, their favorite schnapps, their favorite beer and cigarettes or whatever it was, or they found out that their sister in a different city got one more jelly bean or something like that. Yir b'lechad v'yim l'achar halo yichas alav v'lo yavalav. He'll go on strike and he'll get angry and he said, I'm not coming to the Purim Seder. And I just saw this in his time. He was breakers. You didn't send me the cake I wanted. Don't you know I like babka? I can't stand apple pie. And they have tainas. And if they come, yava b'panim zayaf ha'isakadayma. They'll come with a long face. Oy mishever beis Yisrael lohukash kvoidel kvoid amakam ech yifku b'shvil heder k'tzatz moment. How can you not be makayim kivur of them and have tainas because they didn't give you something? They didn't give you enough money. They didn't give you enough treats. You can't do that. Now, everything's age appropriate. So when the children are younger, they don't understand that. But we have to be meichel because you don't want to be machshel them too much, but you also have to teach them that if you're meichel all day and all night, you don't teach them responsibility. You don't teach them the fact that Akaras HaTov means we give you what you think you need and then some. And if you don't get everything, you can't have tainas. And based on this, Yaras Davash, now we have not only a promise from the Chumash of Arichas Yamim, and per the Ramban, reason it's in the first side of the Aseret Dibros, it's Benodon Lamakom, Hakaras HaTov to Hashem, giving over the Messiah. Now we also have the only way to bring the Gula Shlema is to utilize this chus to undo the chus of Esav and Amalek, and Metz Hashem will improve it, and we'll bring the Gula Shlema. Again, the hard drives are available. They're $10 a piece for the actual hard drive. The Shurim are all for free. You can help yourself. They're in the corner.
Rabbi Yosef, for those of you not satisfied with just the din and want to be Mekayim Lefnei Meshuras Hadin, you could sponsor a Shir L'Chvoid your parents, or those of you who still have parents, sponsor a Shir L'Chvoid them. If Lo'aleinu they're not with us anymore, you can still sponsor the Shir Ilu Nishmosam. Call Irgun Shir Torah 718-851-8651, or email tapecenter@yeshivanet.com for the great schus and opportunity. I'd like to give a big yashikach to Mr. and Mrs. Dov Nierenberg for exclusively sponsoring tonight's shir. CDs of tonight's shir will be available shortly. Yashikach to everyone for coming. Rabbi ben Akashim, Merotzak Baruch Lazakis Yisrael Afik Hiblam Tar Mitzvah Shenemar Lenei Chofes Aman Tzidko Yag.